Hopefully everything will work. So can you see it?
Yes, finally. Yes.
Yeah. So let's see, 5. Okay. For some reason it's not. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about building a sustainable metaverse infrastructure. My background is working at Motorola and Nokia for 33 years. And so we're going to be talking about this transition going from Web 2 to Web 3 and how we will work, learn, shop, and play in 2030. So Alvin Grayland talks about what is the metaverse. He talks about it being the internet plus 3D plus VR. I added, this communication, 5G, 6G, 10G, Wi-Fi 7, cloud, AI, digital twins, basically a whole bunch of things is what the metaverse is about. And so my focus is going to be about the network side and the communication side. So my expertise is around 5G, 6G. I've started in 1G at Motorola. Right now, actually this year, 2022 is when we'll get 1 billion people working in having 1G subscribers. And so the question is, and this will continue to grow. In fact, it's estimated that all the growth is really going to happen between 2025 and 2030. So we're just kind of getting started in the communication side. One of the projects I've worked on specifically around live, work, play, learn and play is using sustainable telecommunications so to minimize our CO2 emissions. So rather than having a patient having to travel 8 hours to a doctor, you have collaboration imaging, you have needle guidance where a patient could be using a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant, and a cancer center could be doing the guidance of that using HoloLens 2. So I worked on a project with MetaView with a 10G. 10G is actually the Cable Labs project that are being worked on for this technology. So right now, this technology is clunky, in my opinion. It weighs a pound. There's people who like it, but it's still heavy. But per Qualcomm, this technology will very quickly evolve, just like the smartphone did, just like the cell phone to the smartphone, and the smartphone, where basically everyone has a smartphone. That will be what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So, how do we prepare for this? And, as I work with, nursing schools and other companies, how do we prepare for this technology that's just about ready to happen? The big issue is, of course, CO2 gas emissions, and how do we have sustainability? Right now, telecommunication, the mobile industry, the good news is we add $2 trillion of economic output to the world economy because of communications. The bad news is we use about 2 billion tons of CO2 emissions to do that, which is equivalent to Russia's annual emissions. But the good news is that by doing this, we actually reduce, people don't travel as much. And so we reduce the amount of CO2 emissions by a factor of 10. So the question is, can we grow the digital economy exponentially versus the physical economy to reduce our CO2 emissions? And that's what the challenges of my industry we're working on. So just as a comment, 2 people spending an hour on Zoom, like we're going to be spending about 3 hours here. These people, that's only 4 grams of CO2 gas emissions per hour, which is equivalent of driving 52 feet. That's versus like a 1 ton of per person of gas emissions for 3-day conference. So how can we reduce our carbon footprint? Well, you do more immersive virtual conferences and less physical travel. And so that is where I think that we have a huge opportunity. The good news is we were reducing our CO2 gas emissions in the United States, though we have a lot more on a per person to go versus the rest of the world. The bad news is actually it's expected this decade, and if things don't change, that we're traveling more and we'll actually grow our CO2 gas emissions here in the United States. So as noted before, the amount of energy, if we keep things constant, will continue to grow and grow. It's expected that over the next 10 years that we're going to increase traffic growth by 27 times. But the good news there is that like Nokia, Ericsson, and other companies have said that we're committed to reduce our emissions while growing. So we grow by a factor of 27 times, but we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. That's also needed because we're going to be introducing all these trillions of devices with 5G and then eventually 6G technology. SoftBank gave this slide that says by 2040, there'll be 10 trillion devices connected to the internet. So all these things connected to the internet, and those are just the things connected to the internet. Right now, 80 billion apparel items are manufactured every year. 5 to 10 trillion disposable things are connected. You have devices. Right now, I think it's like 27 billion microcontrollers and so forth. So all these things are being developed, and the question is, how do we minimize our carbon footprint about that? So my thesis is, if we grow, again, building a sustainable metaverse, if we grow the physical economy by a factor 2x, we are going to grow our CO2 emissions, even if we're being more efficient. But if we grow this metaverse, we can grow the digital economy by a factor in 10, and then also reduce our physical footprint. So, 20 trillion objects by 2040, will they be physical or virtual? This is how one way I think we're going to be solving our CO2 gas emissions. So, I worked in doing some consulting work for Brand Lab Fashions, and the fashion industry right now is responsible for 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. 40% of clothes are never worn, so they're manufactured and they're thrown away. By the way, about the same for food. So if this continues, we're going to go from 10% annual emissions to 25% of annual emissions. So what we have to do is shift from a physical world to a digital world where it makes sense. So if we're going to get to net CO2 emissions, it's likely that in the next 20 years, we'll look back about traveling all over the world just to work in an office, or to be at school, to be bored all day. If we're going to get to net CO2 gas emissions, we need to have more virtual objects and less physical objects. So can we do this? I believe the answer is yes. The cell phone industry, what we did is we went from, having PCs and desktop computers to where we have mobile phones that have a lower carbon footprint. And, we went in 2011 to 7% of the internet traffic was using, mobile phones, to now over 50%. I think it was 56% just recently. So, this is, this great opportunity actually to lower our carbon footprints and get, using metaverse technologies, a metaverse mindset. So, per my slide I have here is, Edward Hubble said, equipped with 5 senses, man explores the world around him and calls that adventure science. So imagine the adventure of immersive technology as we transition from the smartphone age to the super sensation age of sight, smell, touch, taste that's indistinguishable from the physical world. That's where we, it's just as an enjoyable experience in the virtual world as in the physical world, where we can meet and have meaningful connections. So this is the world I'm working towards. I'm really excited about it. So, the metaverse is technology can decrease travel and decrease the physical, environment to build a more responsible and sustainable world. So with that, I thank you and looking forward to the other speakers.